What's up, guys? Today's video is just going to be an album roundup. I'm going to cover 6 albums in this video. I actually ended up talking for way too long while recording this video, so I'm just going to cover the first 3 albums, and there will be a part 2 of this video posted soon. We've got the Upchurch album, Maddie and Tae, John Anderson, Kenny Chesney, The Hot Country Nights, and American Aquarium. If you're interested in any of those bands, just check the description for a timestamp. Like this video if you enjoy it, and let's get into talking about some of these albums. Now, I'm going to do this part first because I imagine there are people here that are only interested in this section of the video, but I do have a history with Upchurch from last year when I reviewed the song with his then girlfriend, Hey Boy, Hey Girl, which is not on this album. Basically, Upchurch was new to me. I tried to sum him up very briefly. I also didn't like that song at all. Upchurch made a video about my criticism of the song, and essentially, if I had to sum it up, it was that I came across as very pretentious and that I didn't understand him. He felt very mischaracterized by my judgment of him, and in turn, I felt misjudged by his characterization of me. You can imagine the tidal wave of his fans coming for me, and if there's a piece of constructive criticism I definitely took from that whole situation, it was just that I can sound like I look down on people. I can communicate in a really pretentious way. And a lot of his fans thought I had not thoughtfully considered my language around what genre he's in. And I know I said hick hop party, I just meant a hick hop concert. But I didn't know hick hop was such a divisive term. I see on his bio on Instagram, he calls himself Southern Hip Hop. Maybe that's a better term for it. But in any case, a lot of people wished I had clarified when he's making country, when he's making hip hop, when he's doing whatever he's doing. And I didn't have that whole knowledge of his history. And I can own the fact that I was ignorant about a lot of that. And the other thing I took away from the experience was recognizing that my perspective and other people's perspectives on country music are super different. For someone like me, I think about country music first and foremost as a musical style, a style of sounds. But for a lot of people, they consider country music a type of music about a lifestyle, about country living. And so we're coming at it from a different angle. And that's cool. I'm not the judge and jury on what's country, certainly. And part of the DNA of this genre has been that exact fight from the very beginning of country music. At the same time, I would definitely not say that I'm part of the establishment, which that video said over and over again. I mean, I left legacy media because I didn't want to be in an ivory tower. I didn't want to be a standard journalist. I actually wanted to be part of the real world, and I moved myself down to Virginia and have built this channel completely independently for the past few years with a ton of pushback from Nashville. I think people sometimes don't realize I'm pretty anti-establishment, but I communicate really politely, so it doesn't necessarily come across that way. But I would bet that me and Upchurch actually have a lot of the same chip on our shoulder when it comes to the mainstream, because I definitely feel misunderstood by the mainstream as well and just make videos in my bedroom in Virginia. Now, I didn't make a video responding and try to kind of drum up clout and get in a beef with him. That's not my style. Internally, I just tried to turn the page, forgive any bitterness that was in my heart toward him. Also, he popped onto one of my live streams and donated like $400 through Super Chat when we were raising money for tornado relief in Nashville. Said, I don't hate you. I just get frustrated with what's happening in Nashville sometimes. So I believe all of this is water under the bridge. I certainly don't desire to have any kind of beef with him or his fan base. That's not what I'm about. And even if me mentioning this name now forever will just invite tons of people to come troll me in the comments, I'm not gonna not cover Upchurch because I think it's crazy when people just pretend he doesn't exist when every single thing that he releases is like #1 digitally. You always see it at the top of Apple Music or iTunes, and he has this giant fan base, and yet it's treated almost like a secret that's not happening in most country music conversations. And I'm trying to talk about what's actually happening in country music. So make your own conclusions, think what you want. I tried to go into listening to his new album, Everlasting Country, with an open mind. And the reality is, I actually really liked this album. You couldn't tell from the title, this is a country album. It was released on 4/20, and I gotta say, it's got a really, really good vibe to it. And to me, that is the album's biggest strength, is its vibe, which I would say is a lot jam bandier than I expected. It kind of feels like it's inspired by like old OAR or 311 fused with country music. And I'm not saying that as any kind of bash on it. To me, that's its competitive advantage. This kind of has this garage rock, really sunny, happy feel to it, at least in the first half especially, that is super different. And I think it's very appropriate for an album released on 4/20. And it definitely feels like something that you could jam out to if you're perhaps in an altered state. I think that sound is best captured on my favorite song on the album, which is called Sonic Drive-In, which is about what it sounds like. It's about being at the Sonic Drive-In and sort of the joy that that evokes. And I also think that lyrically, the chorus of this is the cleverest wordplay on the whole album. He's going to Sonic not only to get the sweet tea and blue drink and tots that people love from Sonic, but he also likes this girl that's on roller skates that's gonna ride with him home. And he says, I needed change in my life. Today, penny pinching done me good. I needed change in my life. Those dirty quarters understood. He's saying I needed change, like I needed this girl to be with me, but it's also singing about literal coins that he's going to use to tip her at Sonic. It's kind of silly, but it's also enjoyable, and the woes that are kind of the interstitial moments between the verses and the choruses are very fun to sing along to. Everlasting Country, the title track here, is probably my second favorite on the album. Everlasting Country. I really enjoy the melody of it. I think it's a great sing-along feel. I like how lush the instrumentation is. You get a big guitar solo. You get steel kind of moving through this song in a really playful way. And I think it elevates a song that has more standard subject matter. And I'm not saying that subject matter is bad or that it's not relatable or that people don't really, go drive around in their truck and enjoy being from the country. I'm just saying, as someone that listens to a crazy amount of country music, it's a narrative that's told a lot, and that doesn't make it bad. But I like this treatment of it. Whippoorwill is actually a kind of cool song that I think captures some of the anger that simmers underneath Upchurch. It's kind of the don't cross me or I'll F you up sort of vibe. But I think that has a really cool slow burn groove to it. And so those are my three favorite tracks in the album. So number 3, 4, and 5. I think they flow really well. I think the whole first half of the album, those first 6 songs, are a pretty solid bunch. Later on in the album, though, is the part of the album I don't love as much. There's 3 tracks that I don't connect with, and it's Step on It, Country Girls, Slow Down. Those 3 right there. The same effect that's kind of on Upchurch's voice, and I don't know how to describe it. It's what I was describing as kind of that garage bandy vibe. When it's put over a beat like that, it feels like it's been super auto-tuned, and those songs are also higher in his register, and I just think it's not as appealing of a sound. The album finishes really strong, though, with a song called Roots Run Deep that to me feels like such a mission statement for Upchurch. And all our roots run deep. And I think the key to kind of his country mentality might be there in the bridge, where he says, I'll be drifting in the moonlight, still living out my songs. I think that value comes across as really important to him, to me, in this album, that he really wants it to be known, I am living out these songs. And in that way, I think it's meant to be kind of an indictment of the mainstream, of people who sing about this stuff, but aren't necessarily living it. But he definitely prides himself on having roots in the country, staying in the country. And again, that's where we get to our different perspectives on country music. That doesn't matter as much to me. I think if you have the style of the music, it doesn't matter as much the lifestyle, but he thinks very differently, and he's saying it on a song like Roots Run Deep, and more power to him. So yeah, on the whole, I like this album. I think it's an enjoyable listen with a few moments that aren't my favorite. I won't pretend to know much about his other genres of music that he makes, but for his first strictly country album, I kind of like it. And then we had Maddie and Tae's new album, The Way It Feels. How does he sleep at night? Mama the nurse. Maddie and Tae, you guys know I'm a fan of them. I actually just put Girl in a Country Song on one of my best of the decade videos because I think that song was such a bold entry into the Nashville scene to come out protesting bro country the way they did. I think it's an eternally cool move. And on top of that, they got the chops. They have amazing harmonies. They're very musical. They bring in some of that kind of 90s pop country sound that we all like. But their label shuttered, and then they got moved around, and they finally re-signed a deal, and they were supposed to release an album, but then Friends Don't didn't really take off on radio, so then it got shelved, then they released EPs, and finally, years after their debut Start Here, they have put out a second album. And I'm really happy for them that they finally got to release this into the world, and I think it's a good album, but it does leave me wanting something more. On the plus side, we have songs like Die From a Broken Heart that is just an absolutely gorgeous song. Harmonies on full showcase, really great writing about the little images that you see after a breakup and her asking her mom if she's gonna die from this broken heart. Great song. There's another similarly beautiful, tender ballad called Water in His Wine Glass. Lord, pour water in his wine glass. That is a cry for help on behalf of an alcoholic and wishing that God, instead of turning the water into wine, would turn his wine into water, that there would be water in his wine glass and bring back the man that this used to be. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous song. And then on the more fun side, there's songs like Bathroom Floor, which I think is a really creative lyric about finding a friend that's crying on the bathroom floor and saying, let's go hit the town and forget about this breakup until you're back on the bathroom floor. And And then the song My Man with its kind of thumping piano, it's almost reminiscent of James Taylor or Elton John. It feels very 80s inspired, it's super fun. That is one of my favorite tracks on the album. But then sometimes this album just feels kind of listless, and I don't know if that's because it was released as an EP and then another EP, and then most of those songs were here on the album, so it didn't feel that new to me, but it just left me wanting something more. And so many songs like Trying on Rings or Everywhere I'm Going just kind of ran together for me into a kind of bland, mid-tempo pop country sound that wasn't sticking in my brain. I think Maddie and Tae have so much expressiveness in their vocals, and they're really good at being really spunky and funny, or they're really good at being super sad and tender, but when you go into this middle zone on songs like Friends Don't, which for the life of me, I will not get why the label did not drop that as a single sooner and just go with Die From a Broken Heart. On those kind of mid-tempo songs, I don't think that's what makes them special, and there's so much of that on this album. And even though a ton of those songs are pretty and engaging taken on their own, like Tourist in This Town, I think is a pretty strong song, and I Don't Need to Know, I think is the hookiest hook on the album. I don't need to know, I don't need to know, I don't need to know. I sing that all the time, just walking around. That's in my head. But taken on the whole, I think it's a really solid album that I liked listening to. But I just don't think it feels like this cohesive project about one thing. And look, they're a lot older, and in the time that has passed, like, they've gone from being teenagers to both being married women, and they've gone through label hell, and so maybe it makes sense that an album made over the course of 5 years would feel a little bit disparate, but it feels a little bit disparate. So also with this album, I liked it. And then we've got the new album from Kenny Chesney called Here and Now. I think Kenny Chesney's in the middle of a little renaissance. His last album, Songs for the Saints, and now this album, Here and Now, are demonstrating a really great version and a great evolution of his kind of beach country style. We've still got allusions to No Shoes Nation, we are still sort of set at the beach, and we're still getting a kind of island breeze all through these songs, but instead of just sitting in a tiki hut and drinking one margarita, we are now kind of sitting in a tiki hut and looking around and wondering, is this where I want to be in life? You know, I said on Twitter that this album, almost emotionally, it's moved on to the fall of Kenny Chesney's life, but the songs are still set in the summer. And what I think makes that sort of wistful looking back vibe really interesting is that Kenny Chesney a lot of times is saying the exact opposite thing. He's saying life is about right here and right now. We have to stay in the moment. He's saying we party in parking lots like pirates. That's what we do. He says that in the very first song. And on the next song, Here and Now, he says, I used to be the kind of person that dreamed about one day, someday, maybe looking forward, maybe having a more eternal perspective, or thinking about what the morality of his life might mean in the larger universe. But I don't do that anymore. Now I live for the here and now. He says that really explicitly, but then other songs reveal shades of nostalgia and regret that sort of disprove that he fully buys into that. And I think it's super interesting. Like, Everyone She Knows is this amazing song, and sure, it's not Kenny being autobiographical. He's singing about a girl that is watching her friends get married and have babies, and she's still going out to bars, and she's wondering, like, am I missing the boat, as it were? As soon as I heard it, I was like, this has got to be a Shane McAnally co-write, and sure enough, it is a Shane McAnally co-write. Super catchy, super good song. I heard it on a run and I was feeling like out of shape. And when we got to the line about her worrying about her health, I was like, oh, dang it. I'm kind of relating too hard to this. Heartbreakers is another song that's looking back. It's so freaking catchy. Where are these girls that used to break my heart, that I used to feel so much for, and then would leave you? And you're kind of left to wonder, are you the person that's changed, or has society changed? But they're not there for him anymore. Other times on this album, Kenny Chesney truly is just feeling happy. You know, he has a song called Happy Does about a guy with a great attitude who, no matter what life throws at him, he just feels happy. He's just got a little bit more simple of a mind. This song has a bevy of songwriters, and I love that Kenny Chesney chooses interesting songs from songwriters that you don't always see, because Kenny doesn't actually write much of his music, but I think he's got a great ear for interesting songs. The first verse of Happy Does, listen to this. Old Sunoco Charlie drives an 87 Harley, sells gasoline and what you drink 8 to 3 a.m. Got a tattoo for the core and ex-wife number 4, humming along, schooling you on the songs on his station. He could be another one cussing the government, nah, but he smiles. Got 100 reasons not to, but he's the poster child for happy is as happy does. I mean, every line of that is just an image. It's just like you're taking a camera and looking at those lyrics, and I love that. And then on the closing track on the album, Guys Named Captain, it's a solo write by a guy named James T. Slater.
Guys named Captain are always characters.
And there's so much cool wordplay, so much imagery in this song about the specific attitude of boating culture. How they love to live large, but they're also kind of undercover. It's not necessarily flashy. It's not Instagram models taking pictures on yachts. The guys that really like being on boats are kind of private and kind of weird. He describes them as Casanovas and entrepreneurs, full of bravado, that's half the allure. The wink of an eye, a shadowy past, laugh lines from blowing smoke up your glass. I just feel like Kenny Chesney is dialed in right now. He's like, look, I stereotype myself as the island guy, and I made a million margarita songs and kind of became an offshoot of Jimmy Buffett, but how can I raise the level of quality and bring in some countryer sounds, bring in some big sing-along choruses, and then temper that with some nostalgia, because he is getting older. I mean, he's in his 50s now. He's been through a divorce. And so when you get the more serious moments on this record, like Someone to Fix or Knowing You, it just feels a lot more balanced of a project. I was really not on the Kenny Chesney train for like a solid decade, but I just think the stuff he's working on right now, if it's not the most unique, not the most different, kind of edgy country you've ever heard, it's really, really solid, it's well conceived, it's well produced, it's well written, and I just think it works. And so I enjoyed this album much more than I expected to, and it's selling like crazy. I mean, I think it's bundled to some kind of tour because there's no way his last record started with 77,000 and this one is starting with like 230,000 in first week sales, but it's pretty freaking impressive either way. So, big fan of Here and Now, unexpectedly, kinda.